Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 45 of Crossing the Line with me, Greg Heym, and Ray clapping in the background. Thanks, Ray.
Nice job, Ray.
Today is November 4th, and today is National Candy Day. Now, Scott Nadler is here, CrossCountry Mortgage.
Thank you.
Does it make sense to have National Candy Day just a couple days after Halloween? Isn't that kind of like, or is that when you eat the rest of?
I have such a sweet tooth, Greg. Every day for me is National
Well, now
Candy
you've
Day.
upset a lot of people because you're a really skinny guy and you're saying you got sweet tooth. But maybe National Candy Day should be the day you eat the leftover Halloween candy, stuff you didn't get around to eating.
That sounds right.
Or you know, like 8 days of Christmas. Like you got to get it done by the.
Or I think people are just depressed after we switch from daylight savings time to standard time.
But you got that extra hour of sleep. That's what's really.
You do, but like people don't want it.
It's like dark at 3 o'clock now.
It's dark at 3 o'clock.
I
think, I know there's regardless of who wins tomorrow, I think we can all agree that we don't need to push the clocks back anymore. We could stay with the daylight savings time.
I
think from an economic perspective also, it helps. It
make
helps
us
the
more
economy.
productive. We'll stay awake longer. You know, I see dark. I'm ready for bed.
Exactly.
I'm old like that.
Yeah.
And we have Lena here as always. So how was the weekend? We always start there. You always do better things than me in the weekend. You're out doing Scott Nadler things.
I don't know about that. It was a pretty low-key weekend. I did go to the marathon yesterday. I did not run it.
Okay.
I was eating candy while other people were running it.
Yeah, that's emotional support, I guess.
Exactly. No, I was with friends. It was a beautiful day. It was exciting. The marathon is such an exciting time. It was fun. It was good. Played tennis last night, which was fun. It was a little sluggish. Didn't play great. These Upper East Side moms dominating me last night. So.
All right, Bobby Riggs, you out there trying to. That's. Well, we did have a Jets win to celebrate. Actually, if we only played Houston, we would win.
Houston's pretty good too.
They were good last year when we beat the pants off them also. Yeah. And Garrett Wilson with the most amazing catch we've seen since probably Odell Beckham. Incredible. I mean, there's Justin Jefferson, a lot of great receivers in make Greg, but how he got his like shin and foot, that was just remarkable.
Yeah, amazing.
And we're just going to savor the win because you never know what's going to happen this week.
My Giants did not win.
No, you made it sort of interesting there at the end, but Washington's a good story. I mean,
Sure.
But it's funny. I seem to remember about a decade ago, they had a rookie quarterback that was ripping up the league and they were dominating, and then he got hurt all the time.
Yeah.
I think Robert Griffith III is an announcer.
Exactly. So, he's doing media.
That's good for him. I had an interesting thing happen. I went to see this guy, Mike Del Giudice, on Saturday at the Paramount. He's in Billy Joel's band. He did a tribute band for Billy Joel for years. Billy Joel heard him, thought it was him, so he hired him to be in his band. So he does these gigs where he does some Billy Joel. Anyway, in the middle of the gig, the fire alarms start to go off.
Oh, wow.
No word from the venue at all. Like he walked off stage and nobody told us anything for about 20 minutes. So then he came out and he said, all right, which one of you guys is smoking in the bathroom? And he goes, it wasn't me. I was on stage. So if you have this relationship to Billy Joel and a fire alarm has just gone off, what song do you play right after that? We didn't start the fire. Yes. A song I don't like, but was apropos.
Remember the movie Step Brothers, where they have the band that only plays 80s Joel? They won't touch anything in the 90s. I love that.
I didn't see the movie.
You didn't see Step Brothers?
No,
Greg. We should let's stop.
I gave up on movies a long time ago. I just watch the same ones over again because I always say I don't want to dedicate. I don't have a lot of time to watch movies, so I always want to make sure I like the movie.
Well, now that it's darker longer, I think you're going to have a little bit more time, and I would highly recommend it.
Well, the other problem is when I get together with my wife and son to watch movies, they only want to watch horror movies. Like Terrifier 2. You ever seen any of these movies? Or the Art the Clown? Don't watch them. They make Halloween and Friday the 13th look like...
The news is terrifying enough, right?
Yes, that's true. And the Yankees, but we're not going there. It's enough in the rear view mirror. We're not going to turn around.
That was painful.
Yeah. People say, well, you made it to the World Series. No, we're the Yankees. You either win or it's nothing. That's what winning teams do.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we are coming, as always, from beautiful Studio 1873. Sorry, I messed up. We're only 4 minutes into this thing, right? Decorated by our great friends at the Everset.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
And we're back, Scott Nadler. All right. So last week was a huge week for the biggest week for economic data that I can remember. We had GDP, PCE, and the jobs report. Sorry, that doesn't have initials related to it, but the other two do.
The BLS.
Oh, yeah, my former employer. I worked there in the early 90s. So let's go in order. We'll just tackle it. Start with Wednesday. GDP comes out. Now, nobody thought we were in a recession, so it wasn't the big headline stuff that particularly the jobs report was, and we'll get to that in a bit. But the economy grew at a 2.8% annual rate in the third quarter. That was a little bit lower than forecast, but pretty solid number, right? I mean, that what you put in.
A solid number, but I think just under 1% of that, I think it was 85 basis points, is from government spending.
Well, we're going to go over that.
Yeah.
You must have read my blog,
I do.
Yeah. Nice. Why aren't you all reading my blog? Okay. I don't get paid based on subscriptions, but it's people tell me it's good. My mother likes it.
No, there's a lot of valuable data in there for sure.
So you know that the Atlanta Fed has this thing called GDP Now, where they try to forecast the number, and they actually hit it on the head this time. So we won't get too into the weeds in this, but the most important thing that influences GDP, or gross domestic product, which is the value of all the goods and services produced in the United States, it's all about consumer spending. It's about 70% of this number is consumer spending. And boy, did they spend. Consumer spending rose at a 3.7% annual rate, fastest pace since the first quarter of 23. Like, Greg, you're talking about last year. Why is that special? Well, because we seem to be in here every week talking about the sheer magnitude of credit card debt, and we're surprised that retail sales are even positive at this point, right? Is the American consumer done? That's what we keep wondering, and keep saying the answer keeps coming back a resounding no, right?
Yeah, people are still out there spending, and it is kind of shocking, the fact that these numbers are still as elevated as they are, despite what the underlying data that we're seeing in the economy itself. So yeah, it is surprising.
And as Scott mentioned, another big reason for this growth was the government spending, which rose at a 5% annual rate. So what the Bureau of Economic Analysis that releases this data does is it shows you the contribution each sector makes. So basically, if you remember your economics class, if you're not an economist, you probably worked to forget it over the years, and I understand that. So it's basically C plus I plus G plus NX. C, consumer spending, contributed 2.46% of that 2.8% increase is that, which makes sense. It's 70%. Investment, which is like inventory, stuff like that, very little, 0.07. Government, 0.85, as you said.
Yep.
And net exports, since we import a lot more than we export, actually subtracted about 0.5%. So you add that all up and you get 2.8. Good number. Economy's in good shape. And we have to have a thank you to the American consumer for consuming. Because if they weren't doing it, it just, the numbers would be bad, right? And look, around all this uncertainty that's going on right now, people are always have something to be worried about. And inflation is still going up. People, we talked about the difference between deflation and disinflation. The rate is slowing, but price is still going up for most things.
Correct.
Right? And we're going to talk about that in the next segment. But it's amazing that consumers under the weight of over 1.1 trillion in credit card debt. But another reason that they're still spending is that wages are growing faster than prices.
Right.
That's good for consumers, but it's not always good in the fight against inflation. So we're gonna go to Thursday's news, but before we do that, we have to have this message from our great sponsor, CrossCountry Mortgage.
Calling all real estate investors. I'm Scott Nadler, VP of Mortgage Lending at CrossCountry Mortgage, and it's time to level up your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned pro or making your first investment, I'll find the right financing to maximize your returns. From single-family homes to multi-unit properties, I'm here to help you crush your investment goals. Ready to grow? Let's connect today and make it happen.
All right, and we're back. So Thursday was PCE Day. Did you know? No, it's not a holiday.
Yeah.
PCE stands for Personal Consumption Expenditures. And that there's two things in that report. One is the final word really on consumer spending. It's based on more complete data than retail sales. And the final word on inflation. So you're going to say, why do we even need CPI then and retail sales? Because we're hungry for data. We want it all the time. So, and remember, this is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index, which rose 0.2% last month and is up 2.1% year over year. That's the headline number before we make any adjustments. Those were both in line with Dow Jones estimates. So no news is good news, right? If the expected happens, stock market's happy, and we can take an early lunch and have a good time. But if we look at the core number, because the Fed likes to look at core numbers, again, you're excluding food and energy because those are volatile. You could have weather-related things that impact the food supply, or even the war going on in the Middle East can impact oil deliveries. So we take those out, and the numbers are actually a little bit higher: 0.3% monthly increase and 2.7% over the last year. So if you want to know, why that difference, the answer is energy prices. Energy prices fell 5% in August and 8.1% in September.
Right.
So with the prices going down like that, that helps the headline number, does nothing for the core number. And we see this with CPI too, right? But the problem is, now talk about this too, is how it relates to mortgages, because this has been going on for years. Prices are still going up. They're not going down. Unless you're buying gas, then go ahead and do that. It's good as we head into the winter, that if oil and gas here are cheaper. But it's got to be hard we wonder how the consumers can spend, but how can they also keep borrowing? People
still feel that prices are higher. The overall common sentiment is that.
Right.
I was thinking about, I had a former colleague of mine, great girl. She was the operations manager. She was one of these people that can put out fires. She's juggling many different things. Greg, she had a horrible boyfriend. Like a horrible boyfriend who treated her terribly, was not supportive, who talked down to her, was not affectionate or intimate or anything like that. And then every so often, he would do something so grand and so great, and then it would bring her right back. And that went on for years. And what were her friends telling her? Too little, too late. Right. It's time to just leave this guy. And she never would. And I kind of think about that I think about her when I think about inflation, because it's like,
I don't know if she's going to be happy about that if she sees it.
I was going to land that plane. But
I was looking for the guy with the light sticks, so we know when
the numbers are coming down, but people are still feeling that the prices are higher. Yeah. And so when we talk to clients, look, I know we might get into rates, but right. In May, they were in the low 7s. Then in September, they dropped to 6%. Now they're a little bit higher. So it's that overall sentiment that they should be lower.
Right. No, I mean, the weight of this going on for a couple of years is rough because, the food has been, a big problem because those prices have not come down. And people are spending levels of their disposable income on food they haven't in decades because of the cost. Part of it is, too, that we hadn't had inflation as a real problem since the 80s. And, we had several decades of incredibly low inflation, incredibly low mortgage rates, and we got spoiled. Got a little soft when it comes to inflation. But things are moving in the right direction. You hear the headline numbers at 2.1. The Fed is looking for 2, and they don't even have to wait till 2. As we saw, they've already cut rates once. But I think, they can feel emboldened to say, hey, we can do what we want. It's going in the right direction. And, the big problem, too, in all this is housing and how that fits in and how it's measured in some senses because, when house prices go up, they don't come down very quickly unless something really dramatic happens. And something really dramatic hasn't happened. So that's still a very high cost for people, very low supply of homes out there.
When it comes to rates also, it seems like the sales cycle is longer now, where we're talking to people for 6 or 7 months before they decide to buy. Whereas when rates were really low, it was much, much quicker. So now if you're talking to someone who was shopping in April or May when the rates were in the 7s and now they're in the mid 6s, it's not nearly as bad. But if you talk to someone that was looking in September and now they're higher, they might take a step back.
Now, do you get calls from people you've been working with who say we got to lower our price range now because of what's going on with inflation and, the weight of everything and the fact that in most areas of the country, home prices are not going down at a time when rates are going up? Do you see a lot of that?
A little bit, but normally in that initial phone call, we'll go over a range and say, look, if rates are between 6.5% or 7%, here's where we are. Here's what our DTI looks like. So clients typically have a good idea of that, but if it goes beyond that, then we have to have another conversation for sure.
Yeah, it's hard because you're chasing a moving target on two fronts, the prices and rates at the same time. One is hard to do, and I can understand that people are frustrated. And, as we're heading towards the holidays, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about, how are consumers expecting to spend more money than last year on holiday shopping when such a large percent of them haven't paid off last year's bill yet.
Right.
And I think part of it is people like, well, I need it. I got to do it, right? It's an obligation. It's not really something, or they think that because the Fed is cutting rates, that their credit card rates are going to come. And then we're going to talk about this later, but why not talk about this now? The Fed has already cut short-term rates by 0.5%, which should have an immediate impact on credit card rates because that's your unsecured variable rate kind of thing. That's your prime example. So a website called cardratings.com did a survey of credit cards and found that only 37% of the credit cards they looked at have actually lowered their rates. And the average rate cut was only 13 basis points. So if you're waiting if you think...
Lena hated that story.
Lena's like, what? That's the thing. A lot of people probably were assuming that they could spend a little more money because their credit card rate was going to go down, just like a lot of people are spending more money because their student loans keep getting waived. That's not always the case. And with mortgages too. We kept telling people, I'm not going to use the words "we told you so" because that would sound smuggish, but that's even a word. But this is why waiting for a bottom, you miss, right? And it's not a smooth path. It's not an escalator that's only going to go down, right?
Exactly.
And what's the rule? Rates go up.
Rates go up very quickly and they go down very slowly. I will say, though, so many clients are telling us right now who are buying, they're going to be lower next year, so I'm going to refinance. These are not economists. These are everyday regular people.
Economists can't afford to buy homes, let's be honest. We're wrong too often. They actually dock my pay if I make an incorrect prediction.
Is that right?
No, I'd be destitute if that was true. No, it's hard. I think people, again, it's all about informed decisions, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do here, is feel comfortable with what you're doing.
We do feel that where rates are right now and where they've been over the past 6 months or so, it's temporary. That they will be lower next year. Clients will have opportunities to refinance. So this gives them an opportunity to get into a home. We're seeing multiple bid situations now. So the market's heating up. October was a very busy month.
By the way, why do you get an economic rule? Why did I name it after you when I'm an economist and I don't have an economic rule?
There's still time.
Just like you can't give yourself a nickname. You're going to have to do that for me. All right.
The show is named after you, by the way. You have a whole show.
Well, that's because I demanded it. It's true.
Get your name on the mug right here.
Yes, but not my likeness. I wasn't handsome enough to be on the mug itself. Because people go to drink and they drop it or something like that. I'm like, oh, that's that guy. All right. Well, we're going to tell you why Scott's probably right about the temporary nature of the recent surge in mortgage rates right after this message.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay. And we're back. All right. So Friday was the biggest and craziest bit of economic news, though. Did I see that right moment when you looked at it come across?
Who says mortgages and economics isn't exciting?
People that haven't bought a home in a while, and I don't know. You can make almost anything sound exciting.
That's true. It's fair.
Even the Jets offense can be exciting once in a while. It's not often.
Be stretching it. But.
Yeah, well, we're working on it. So we go back a month when we got September's jobs number. It was blow away, over 250,000. It's like, wow. And that started the mortgage rate surge, right? Well, how's 12,000 sound last month? Because that's what the number was. Only 12,000 jobs added. And it's a scary headline for sure. I will explain why it was so low and whether or not you should be worried or whether or not you can dismiss this. But let's go through all the headlines for a minute. That 12,000 was significantly lower than the 100,000 economists were looking for. We look for a lot of things we don't find. We're economists. Feel like Indiana Jones sometimes. And then we think we get it, someone takes it from us, and we don't get to use whips like Indy did. I can't outrun boulders either.
A nickname is brewing, Greg.
I don't know. Work on it. It's gonna, it's got to be a good one. So that's the lowest monthly increase in employment since December of 2020. So right away, it sounds worse. So how do you go from 254,000 jobs to 12,000? Well, again, before we get into that number, last month's number was revised down to 223,000. Now, and August and September combined were revised downward by 112,000. And to show you how fun this is, and this is why estimates and sampling are dirty words in economics. So August number now has been revised twice because you do the prior 2 months in every report. So when August's number first came out, it was 142,000 jobs created. Then in the happy month, September, up to 159.
And that's when rates started to
go
up. That was the...
And now, just 78,000. So basically, a little more than half of what was expected.
Right.
So, again, we can't look at one report and hit the panic button. We don't have a budget for a panic button yet. It'd be funny if we told you when to panic. If anybody would listen, that'd be nice. The biggest increases in hiring last month, and this has been going on for a while, are healthcare and government. And I'll tell you, I know I keep saying, I'll tell you in a moment why that's not good. The unemployment rate was unchanged. Some people might say that's good.
But if you look at the decimal points on that, because I think last month it was 4.054, which rounds up to 4.1. And then this month it was 4.14, which rounds to 4.1. So it ticked up a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you an even greater reason to be suspicious of that number in a minute. Final bit of details. Wages rose 0.4% in October and are 4% higher than a year ago. So it's running, almost double wage growth year over year, the rate of inflation. So that is good for the consumer. So that's part of the reason why they can spend a little more comfortably or borrow a little more comfortably. All right, so let's go back to all those things I said I was going to explain. So why was the number just 12,000? Well, Boeing strike and hurricanes Helene and Milton, right? When you have something like that, people get out of work immediately. Obviously, strikes are right away. And then with the hurricanes, there's a big drop in manufacturing that you can attribute to the hurricanes and Boeing. Both can be blamed for that.
Wasn't that priced in, though?
Well, here's the thing. So if they knew that these numbers are going to be bad because of the hurricanes and the Boeing strike, why were economists looking for 100,000 then?
Right.
How stupid can they be? It's a loaded question. The best answer I can come up with is it's hard for an economist to say how many jobs that's going to cost because you don't know. With Boeing, you know how many people went on strike, but when exactly they return to the payrolls, who knows? With the hurricanes, how long is the delay between when they stop getting paid and things like that? And what are the residual effects? And how long do they last? So I'll cut them a break because it's hard to know. And that, if they were wrong by 90,000, that's nothing in the scope of what we see with revisions with this stuff. The BLS also mentioned, now I worked for the BLS, like I said, a long time ago, and BLS surveys are voluntary. So you call up companies and you want wage and benefit and other data, and they can tell you no, and you can't really do anything about it. But because of the issues with the hurricane, they had fewer companies respond to their surveys. I
saw this. Yeah, this was
and that
very interesting.
When you change the sample size dramatically, that can lead to wonky data, so to speak. So
the low response rate was also in unaffected areas, also, correct?
I didn't see the breakdown, but it can happen. Look, from month to month, you could see dramatic changes. Mm-hmm. But I think, the areas you most need the most data are the ones that are you're seeing the lowest response rates.
I think it said it was at a 30-year low.
Yeah, which is
wild.
Yeah, it's rough. And, I always took it personally when companies, I was young back then. New York has very high refusal rates when it comes to some of this stuff. But
that sounds right.
So, a lot of economists said ignore this. It's all about the hurricanes and Boeing and whatever, and let's just forget about it and hope it all works out in the morning. And that all sounds great. But there are a couple of things in this report that don't pass the Heym test. See, I'm already starting to work one in there.
That was good.
Number one, the 112,000 jobs subtracted in August and September. When I see 112,000 jobs disappear, I get worried. Scott Nadler, you get worried, right?
Mm-hmm, of course.
I mean, it's not the 800 and change that we saw, but that was over a year. This is just 2 months.
If you don't have a job, you can't get a mortgage. And then you can. There are actually ways of getting around it, but for the overwhelming majority of people.
Why didn't we lead with that? Why don't you tell us how to get a mortgage without a job? Because we could have saved them 30 minutes of having to listen to us.
We can go off someone's assets. You could add someone onto the loan who does have a job. There are different creative ways where you can help someone out who isn't currently employed, for sure.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, that's good to know.
Or if they're going to get a job and they have an employment letter that shows what their start date will be and what their job title is, and it's in the future, we can count it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, there you go.
We're creative.
That's what we count on, creativity. All right, so the other problem, is again, most of the jobs being added are in healthcare and government. And that's great for the people in there, but they're not really reflective of the current state of the economy. Government does what they want when they want, and we're not allowed to ask too many questions. And, people get sick, all the time in good economies and bad. Governments spend hire people in good times and bad. So they're not really, you want to see it really be more tied to the private sector, because government is a big part of healthcare too. Medicaid, Medicare, big drivers of that stuff. So we'd like to see it mostly in the private sector and not be part of the government's actions. And yes, the unemployment rate was unchanged. I know the decimal, people really, CNBC, always see them looking at the multiple decimal points out. But, it wasn't like hiring kept it from going down.
Right.
Because as we've mentioned before, there are two surveys, the establishment or payroll survey, which is what gives us the number of jobs created in a month. And then there's the household survey, which gives us the unemployment rate. Household survey is a smaller sample. They call Scott up and go, are you working? He goes, I think so. And they go, okay, that's it.
Right.
If you say you're not looking, you're not working, the next question is, are you looking for work?
Yeah.
And you're counted as unemployed if you say yes. If you say no, then you're not counted, right? Because you're not looking. So,
and if people stopped looking for 4 weeks or more, they're not counted anymore.
Right.
So I think 220,000 people fell off. And if you add those people back in, the unemployment rate would be closer to 4.3%.
Well, and if you look at the household survey, their change in employment last month would have been a loss of 368,000 jobs.
Right.
So again, that's not the last word on hiring. That's the payroll survey, which is a much bigger thing. But the payroll survey also double counts people doesn't pick up new business, doesn't differentiate between full and part-time people as much as they should. So, the fact the unemployment rate didn't move, remember, there's two sides to that equation. One is certainly the hiring side, but the other is how many people are entering or leaving the workforce. The labor force participation rate, which is a percentage of working age people that are either working or looking for work, hasn't really moved much. So I think that's been helpful. Mm-hmm. Usually in a good economy, you see that rate going up a little bit. People get encouraged. There are more jobs out there. But it's one of those things that hasn't really even totally recovered from COVID. So, this report comes out and you think in normal times, the markets would be like, oh, no, this is bad. Like maybe we're headed towards recession. This is terrible. How does that happen? But no, the futures went up immediately after the report came out. And why would that happen? Well, what does the stock market want? What's its favorite thing? Lower rates. We want Fed rate cuts. We want them now. Or as the Doors saying, we want the world and we want it now. They want their rate cuts now. So, they're like, oh, this is all right. Yeah, maybe hiring's not so great. Maybe that's a problem, but we're all about now and the near future. So let's just go with that.
They're going to get their wish.
So now the Fed is locked and loaded on two fronts. One is, hey, look, 2.1%. That's almost 2. We're going to use a dynamic approach. That means we don't actually have to get to the 2. We don't have to ring the horseshoe. It's just got to be close enough to the thing. People don't do horseshoes. Did cornhole get rid of throwing horseshoes?
Ooh, I think so.
I don't know.
I think you're right.
Because horseshoes or bocce, I half my family's Italian. The bocce game used to be the main event. The family reunions. Shuffleboard went out a long time ago. Curling is shuffleboard on ice. That's cooler because they have the brooms. Yeah, that's great. So
pickleball did.
Pickleball has done nothing. What electric bikes have done.
Cornhole has done to horseshoes.
So I would have said electric bikes for actual bikes.
Yeah, that's fair. Or scooters.
When I visited my in-laws in Florida, I was going for a walk one morning, and there's this gigantic building going up. And I'm like, what could that be? Is it like a factory? This isn't the kind of place you'd put a factory. No, it's a gigantic pickleball center.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Especially in Florida. All right, so where was it? So 2.1% annual rate of inflation, in one holster. And they could just say, well, here. Yeah. So we can do whatever we want. Now you got a bad jobs report. You go, hey, now we're really locked and loaded. That said, there's a meeting this week, right after something that happens on Tuesday. And then they start their meeting on Wednesday, Thursday, we get the decision. Mm-hmm. I don't know why it takes 2 days. They already know what they're going to do because they have all the information by now. They've already decided, I would hope. They had said they wanted to cut rates 1% this year. They've already gone half that. I still think they do 25. Do you have an opinion on this?
I think 25. I think that makes most sense. It is interesting, though, how the good news is bad news. The bad news,
of course,
is good news. The revisions in these reports, it seems like every episode we talk about those. The impact that this data has on regular people, like getting mortgages, for example, is real. I mean, rates, the 10-year Treasury went from 3.6 to 4.3 after the September jobs.
Well, remember also CPI came in a little above expectations too. That didn't help.
Right. It was one thing after another, but then the reports come back and they're revising the data. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next couple months or a year or so how the market starts to trade based on the data and seeing, because it seems like even on this report there was a muted response. People wanted to wait and see, and they were, to your point, focused on what's going to happen with the Fed. They weren't even, they were kind of dismissing this report.
Well, the average person might have got a little worried. It's like, we went from 250 plus jobs to 12,000. Like that can't be good. Right. And then somebody next to him, the nerd economist, probably said, no, that's great. That means they're going to cut rates and then you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And then
they mentioned Boeing and they mentioned
they mentioned hurricanes.
There's all these excuses.
You know what? At least it's a valid excuse. They both happened, like we know. But it's always hard when you have natural disasters to, is that going to be out of the equation when we get the November data? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll have to see how long that lingers.
Right.
And look, it seems like these events are happening a little more frequently, and that's going to be tricky. It will help maybe the BLS get better estimates of the timing of everything and how long it takes to get back to where you were. But
it's almost like that second report should gain more traction than the initial report that comes out. It's like when a celebrity says something that they shouldn't have said, and then they apologize about it after. The thing that they said that got them into trouble in the first place is what everyone remembers. They don't remember the apology.
Well, because the apology is usually like, I'd like to apologize to Scott Nadler if when I called him a jerk, it bothered him. Like, it's always like if I offended you when I insulted you.
Well, maybe it's not an apology then. Maybe it's more of,
but it's like, how sincere is it?
Here's what I meant to say. Or it was, or if the media publishes a story that they know is not correct, and then they come back a week later and correct that story.
That correction is in the
like
fine print. Yeah, where it was on the cover. Yeah,
exactly. That's
if we ever make a mistake on the show, Ray will have a cool effect to that. Just flash and Greg was wrong.
I don't think I've ever seen you make a mistake, right?
Oh, I've made plenty. I go back and watch these things. I'm like, oh man.
No, he's right.
Well, I have no say over your pay on this, right? Because I pay myself all the money, and All right, so we're going with the 25-25 plan, which makes most. Look, could they front load it and do 50? I think the problem is if they do 50, it would look like panic. Like, again, the whole thing, what does the Fed know that we don't know? Mm-hmm. They get top secret data that we're not allowed to see. All right, so we got, we're over our usual goal, but that's what happens when you get so much data. So let's quickly on housing. Rates went up for the 5th straight week. So after getting as low as like just over 6, like 6.08, I think it was, or whatever. 5 weeks of increases, now we're up to almost 6 3/4.
Yep.
When's that going to change?
Yeah.
No. So did people call you up saying, "Oh no, I screwed up. Like I should have moved"? Did people realize that this could happen?
No, it's more the clients who decided not to lock in a rate.
Right.
They wanted to wait, thinking that rates are just going to go down. And we say this all the time. As long as I've been doing this I'm staring at interest rates all day long. We have no idea where they're going to be each day. We can have an idea as far as the direction, but even that direction, it's a guess because things can change. For the most part, people are okay. They do understand the volatility of a market. I have a client actually who is a government worker, and she decided, she said, I think they're going to be lower. I said, okay, we're going to go with that. And they went up 50 basis points on her, and she just laughed about it. She fully understands. And I think most people do.
But to go to your point earlier, you still have that protection of lower rates next year. I think most people are in that camp. I'm going to tell you exactly what we think they're going to be, but this is the unevenness of the ride.
Yeah.
And that's, but if you want to look on the happy side, which you should never come to an economist for, a year ago, they were averaging 7 3/4. Right. So you're basically 1% lower than a year ago. Mm-hmm. So that should make you happy.
And people get so fixated on the rate when they should be focused on the monthly payment. And sometimes that monthly payment doesn't deviate all that much. It doesn't make such a big difference, where it could be $60 a month.
Right.
And, it's not moving the needle all that much.
Because that's not the problem. Well, the problem is when they're at the cocktail party and they go, "Oh, what rate you get?" They're like, "I got,"
Is that what people are talking about? And
I don't get invited to cocktail parties. Keggers maybe, but no, not cocktail parties. We joke about it all the time. People used to brag about what they paid for their house. Now it's about the rate.
Right.
Because, I'm smart. It's like, no, you got lucky. Yeah. And, it's the other thing. Not only are rates higher than, more than double what they were just a couple of years ago, the volatility is something we have not seen. Correct. Bond markets were on this incredible bull run for decades.
Correct.
And now they're as crazy as stocks.
The best is when people ask me, when are rates going to be at 3% again?
When you build a time machine and you go back to 2020, 2021, yeah, there'll be 3.
Yeah.
Again, something that had never happened before, you can't expect to happen again. It's the whole Jets Super Bowl thing. It's been, over 50 years. I can't expect it to just happen again. It was a miracle it happened in the first place.
Yeah. Your ability to bring it all back to
the Jets.
Jets is
well,
incredible.
For some reason you as a fan, everybody that is in the sports has one team. The Jets and the Mets are good examples. Thank God I'm not a Mets fan.
The Knicks are my team.
The Knicks are another team. The Knicks have won twice in the history of the NBA. Twice. New York, twice.
We are looking pretty good right now, though, Greg.
Yes, but can you beat Boston in a series? I think it's exciting what they've done. Now there's talk about Giannis. I don't know. It's crazy. But, that's why I thank God every day I'm a Yankee fan. Joe DiMaggio, they used to have it signed in Yankee Stadium. I want to thank the good Lord for making me a Yankee. I want to thank the good Lord for making me a Yankee fan. Yeah. Because at least they win occasionally. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's been once in 24 years. Once. The Rangers have won once in 84 years. Big difference. Okay, so just remember that.
There's a Netflix documentary about the Boston series in 2004. I assume that you.
I am not going to watch it because it was. I always thought there's a great quote from Bernie Williams when they were getting ready to play the Red Sox, and he was all nervous, and Yogi Berra went up to him and said, "What are you worried about? We've been playing these guys for years. They can't beat us." You knew if they were going to lose to the Red Sox, it was going to have to be something biblical, like blowing, like in 2003, they had choked and let Aaron Boone, of all people, hit a home run to win the series. We didn't even win the World Series that year. But you knew that the collapse, having Mo blow, although he was put in a tough situation in a couple of those games. Unbelievable, especially the way that they had smacked them down earlier in the series.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about sports. Every game, it's just got to take it one game at a time.
My roommate in college is a diehard Yankees fan. And that series was our freshman year. And he disappeared for 2 days. No one knew where he was. And he came back with a tattoo of the Yankee symbol on his calf. And he was in our dorm room and he called his father. You would have thought a family member passed away. They were just silent on the phone for a good 15 minutes. It goes to the expectation of winning or nothing. Though I would say the 2001 World Series upset me more because everything was lined up. It was a special year, the comeback of the city, coming back against Oakland, coming back in those 3 games in Yankee Stadium, coming back in desperate situations, and then to have Mo on the mound with the lead. It's all my wife's fault, by the way. She came into the living room. I hadn't moved in hours. I said, "You got to get out of here. You're going to jinx them." She wouldn't leave. And then, of course, after they win, then she left the room. And I was like, oh. The nervous you get, the nervous feeling you get watching those Yankee games. 94, I thought I was going to have a heart attack between the Rangers and the Knicks. I see they're going to be the greatest, time of my life or the worst. OJ chase? There's
during one of the Knicks games. I mean, yes. I was just trying to explain to my son how, because he thinks nothing exciting happened before he was born. Come on, an OJ chase in the middle of the NBA Finals.
Incredible.
It's that stuff. You can't make that stuff up. Yeah. Well, we try not to make stuff up here. At least not that you're aware of. Nobody's fact checking us yet. We'll try to stay off the radar. But thanks as always to Scott Nather and CrossCountry Mortgage and the Everset and Ray and Lena. Since no one's going to thank me, I'll thank myself.
Thank you, Greg.
Scott, I appreciate it.
Fantastic job today.
Well, we're all just trying to do our best. Sorry about the long time, but there was just so much to talk about, and I think it's important to look at this stuff and, at least, again, information. That's what we have to sell here. And guess what? It's free. So that makes it even more attractive. So thanks for tuning in. We love the support we've been getting. Thank you to everybody who watches it on YouTube or downloads it when they work out. Hopefully we get your heart pumping a little bit, or we cool you down after your workout, whatever works for you. But thanks again, and we look forward to crossing the line with you again next week.